What if everything you've ever been told about success and happiness was backward? We've been taught to believe that if we work hard, we'll be successful, and only then we'll be happy. But what if the real formula is the opposite? What if happiness is not the result of success, but the very cause of it? Today, we'll explore The Happiness Advantage by Shawn Achor, a groundbreaking book that reveals how positivity fuels achievement, productivity, and resilience. This isn't just theory. It's backed by science, tested at Harvard, and proven across organizations worldwide. Part 1. Positive Psychology at Work. Introduction. The Broken Formula. For generations, society has taught us a simple, seemingly logical equation. If we work hard, we'll succeed, and only then will we be happy. We chase grades, promotions, money, and milestones believing that once we achieve them, happiness will follow. But Shawn Achor's research turns this entire idea upside down. He discovered that this formula is not only incomplete, it's entirely backward. In reality, happiness fuels success. A positive brain is more creative, more motivated, more productive, and far more resilient in the face of challenges. Yet we live in a world that rewards burnout and glorifies exhaustion. We tell ourselves that happiness is the reward we'll earn after years of grinding. But each time we hit a goal, our brains simply move the goalpost further. The raise becomes the next promotion. The A becomes the next degree. The temporary joy fades, and we're back on the treadmill. Achor's research at Harvard, spanning over 1,600 students and countless professionals, revealed something profound. Waiting for happiness limits our potential, while cultivating it first unlocks it. The moment we learn to train our minds toward positivity, every aspect of our performance improves, from intelligence and creativity to energy and decision-making. Discovering the happiness advantage. Achor's journey into this discovery began not in a lab, but in the dorm rooms of Harvard University. Coming from Waco, Texas, he was a small-town boy entering a world of privilege and pressure. He expected every student at Harvard to feel gratitude and joy for being there. After all, it was one of the most coveted opportunities in the world. But to his surprise, many students saw it differently. Some viewed Harvard as a gift, a privilege they'd worked hard for. Others saw it as a source of constant pressure, comparison, and competition. The same environment that inspired some students left others paralyzed by stress. The difference wasn't the workload or the exams. It was the mindset. The students who focused on gratitude and opportunity thrived both emotionally and academically, while those who fixated on stress often spiraled into anxiety and burnout. Achor witnessed this pattern again during a speaking trip to Soweto, South Africa. He visited a school in one of the poorest areas near Johannesburg. When he jokingly asked the children who enjoyed doing schoolwork, nearly every hand shot up. Unlike Harvard students, these children saw education as a privilege their parents never had. Their joy and engagement stemmed not from circumstance, but from perspective. This moment solidified Achor's realization. Happiness is not the belief that everything is perfect. It's the ability to see potential and gratitude, even in imperfection. Our brains don't just process reality, they shape it. Escaping the cult of the average. Traditional psychology has long focused on fixing what's broken, studying mental illness, trauma, and dysfunction. It measures what's average and tries to help people return to that baseline. But Achor challenges this cult of the average. Why settle for studying the norm when the true insights lie in the outliers? The people who thrive even under pressure, who succeed against all odds. These positive outliers hold the real secrets to performance. Instead of deleting them as statistical errors, Achor studied them to understand what makes them excel. Positive psychology emerged from this revolutionary shift, studying what makes life worth living rather than what makes it miserable. By learning from the best performers, emotionally, mentally, and professionally, we can replicate their success. The core idea is simple. If we study only what's average, we remain average. But if we study the extraordinary, we can move the entire average upward. This is the heart of the happiness advantage. learning from the positive exceptions that redefine what's possible. Going hungry at Harvard. In 2006, Harvard introduced a course called Positive Psychology taught by Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar, with Achor as his teaching fellow. Expecting just a few dozen students, they were stunned when more than 1,200 enrolled, nearly 1 in 6 Harvard undergraduates. These were some of the brightest, most ambitious young minds in the world, yet they were starving, not for grades but for happiness. Despite their achievements, many felt exhausted, lonely, and unfulfilled. They had mastered calculus but not contentment, aced exams but failed at joy. The same drive that propelled them to Harvard had also trapped them in a loop of perfectionism and pressure. Achor observed a dangerous pattern. When these students became overwhelmed, they didn't reach out for support, they withdrew. They isolated themselves, believing that working harder and longer would fix their stress. But the science showed the opposite. Social connection is the single greatest predictor of happiness and success. The more people invested in relationships, the more resilient and high-performing they became. The lesson was clear. Happiness isn't a reward at the end of success. It's the fuel that drives success from the start. Doctors in a positive mood make diagnoses 19% faster. Optimistic salespeople outsell pessimists by 56%. Students who feel happy before an exam perform better than those who are neutral. The data was undeniable. Positivity primes the brain for peak performance. The happiness advantage at work. After years at Harvard, Achor took his research into the corporate world. From financial firms in New York to classrooms in Africa, he wanted to test if the same principles applied outside academia. What he found was astonishing. Happiness was just as powerful in boardrooms as in dorm rooms. In 2008, amid the global financial collapse, Achor trained professionals from companies like American Express, UBS, and KPMG. Despite chaos in the economy, employees who learned to apply positive psychology showed remarkable results. Stress levels dropped, engagement rose, and productivity skyrocketed. Even months after the training, these effects persisted. His experiments proved that happiness is not a luxury. It's a strategic advantage. In tough times, positivity becomes the most valuable resource. People who focus on opportunities rather than obstacles can navigate crisis, innovate faster, and inspire others. Happiness is not about ignoring problems. It's about approaching them with a mind wired for solutions. Change is possible. The final lesson in Part 1 is perhaps the most hopeful of all. Change is possible for everyone. For decades, science claimed that our brains were fixed after adolescence. But modern neuroscience proves the opposite. Our brains are plastic, constantly reshaping and rewiring themselves based on experience, thought, and behavior. Through consistent practice, we can train our minds to adopt more positive patterns. This isn't wishful thinking, it's biology. Just as London taxi drivers expand the part of their brain responsible for navigation, we can expand the parts responsible for optimism, focus, and resilience. The more we practice gratitude, mindfulness, and positive reflection, the stronger those neural pathways become. This means pessimists aren't doomed to negativity, and stressed minds aren't trapped in anxiety. By changing our mental habits, we literally change our brains. Positive thinking becomes less of an act and more of an instinct. As Achor puts it, happiness is not the belief that we don't need to change. It's the realization that we can. Part 2. The 7 Principles. Principle number 1. The happiness advantage. The first and most foundational principle explains how happiness doesn't just make us feel better. It actually makes our brains work better. This is the happiness advantage. Achor discovered that when our brains are in a positive state, they perform significantly better than when they are in a negative, neutral, or stress state. Happiness gives us a measurable edge in productivity, creativity, resilience, and even physical health. In his studies, Achor found that people who are happy are 31% more productive, 37% better at sales, and 3 times more creative. They're also more likely to live longer and maintain stronger immune systems. This isn't just motivational fluff, it's neuroscience. When we feel positive, dopamine and serotonin flood the brain, enhancing learning, focus, and motivation. Achor's research also revealed that success doesn't cause happiness. Rather, happiness precedes success. This reversal of the traditional formula means that cultivating positivity first leads to tangible achievements later. For instance, doctors who were primed with happiness made accurate diagnoses nearly 19% faster, and students who felt positive before a test scored higher than their peers. In every domain, happiness is the foundation that fuels success. So how can we create the happiness advantage in our own lives? It starts with daily habits, gratitude journaling, meditation, physical exercise, acts of kindness, and nurturing social relationships. These are simple yet profoundly effective practices that train the brain to default toward positivity. Over time, happiness becomes not a fleeting emotion, but a mental skill, one that compounds over time. Principle number 2, the fulcrum and the lever. The second principle draws inspiration from Archimedes, who famously said, "Give me a lever long enough and a place to stand, and I can move the world." Achor applies this metaphor to the mind. Our fulcrum represents our mindset, the place from which we see the world. The lever is our power to act. By shifting our mindset, we effectively change the length of our lever, multiplying the impact of our efforts. Our mindset determines how we perceive challenges and opportunities. A negative or fixed mindset limits potential, while a growth mindset, the belief that we can change and improve, expands it. When we believe that our behavior matters and that our actions can lead to improvement, we tap into an extraordinary reserve of motivation and creativity. Achor gives examples from the workplace where employees who reframed their roles experienced dramatic improvements. When hospital janitors viewed themselves not as cleaners, but as caregivers contributing to healing, their job satisfaction and performance soared. Similarly, managers who viewed challenges as learning opportunities instead of threats developed stronger teams and greater resilience. The takeaway is powerful. Happiness and success are products of perception. By adjusting our mental fulcrum toward optimism and empowerment, we increase the leverage we have over every area of our lives. Principle number 3, the Tetris effect. After hours of playing the game Tetris, players begin seeing geometric patterns everywhere, in buildings, boxes, even the arrangement of furniture. Psychologists call this the Tetris effect. The human brain adapts to what it repeatedly focuses on. If we constantly scan the world for mistakes and problems, our brains become wired to see only negativity. But if we train our minds to notice positives, moments of joy, success, gratitude, we reshape our mental patterns. Achor demonstrates this principle through studies on gratitude journaling. Participants who spent just 5 minutes each day writing down 3 positive things that happened to them experienced higher levels of optimism and well-being even months later. The exercise retrains the brain to notice and store positive experiences, counteracting the natural bias toward negativity. In a professional setting, this means training employees to recognize small wins and progress rather than only focusing on missed targets or failures. The Tetris effect helps us spot opportunities where others see obstacles. Over time, this creates a powerful upward spiral of motivation and creativity. The lesson is clear. What we focus on becomes our reality. Principle number 4, falling up. Adversity is inevitable, but the way we respond to it determines whether it breaks us or builds us. Achor calls this falling up, the ability to use setbacks as a springboard for growth. Rather than falling down and staying down, resilient individuals rise stronger, armed with new insights and mental toughness. He explains that after traumatic events or major failures, the human brain can map 3 possible paths: one where we remain stuck, one where we decline, and one where we grow beyond where we started. Falling up is choosing that third path to find meaning and growth in pain. Achor shares examples of soldiers who, after returning from war, use their experiences to help others, becoming more empathetic and purpose-driven. Similarly, business leaders who faced bankruptcy or failure often emerged with sharper focus and better decision-making. Psychologists refer to this as post-traumatic growth, the phenomenon where adversity strengthens rather than weakens us. Following up requires reframing failure as feedback. Instead of asking, "Why me?" we ask, "What can I learn from this?" That simple question turns obstacles into opportunities. It's not about denying pain, but about transforming it into progress. Principle number 5, the Zorro circle. When challenges feel overwhelming, our first instinct is often to panic or freeze. Achor's fifth principle, inspired by the story of the masked hero Zorro, teaches us to regain control by focusing on small, manageable goals. In his training, Zorro first had to master swordsmanship within a single small circle drawn in the sand before expanding his reach. The lesson: when life feels chaotic, start small. Instead of trying to fix everything at once, focus on one controllable area. This could be organizing your workspace, committing to a daily routine, or improving communication with one colleague. These small victories build momentum and confidence, which gradually expand our circle of control. Achor found that people who practiced this principle experienced greater motivation and resilience. By conquering small goals, they restored a sense of agency and reduced stress. Over time, their Zorro circle expanded naturally, allowing them to handle larger challenges with clarity and composure. Principle number 6, the 20-second rule. Willpower, as it turns out, is often overrated. When something requires too much effort to start, our brains default to old habits. The 20-second rule is Achor's simple but effective strategy to outsmart laziness. The idea is to reduce the activation energy, the effort needed to begin a positive habit, by just 20 seconds, or to increase it for negative habits. For instance, if you want to practice guitar more often, keep it on a stand in the living room instead of tucked away in a case. If you want to exercise, lay out your gym clothes the night before. Conversely, if you want to stop binge-watching TV, remove the batteries from the remote. By manipulating convenience, you shape your behavior without needing constant discipline. Achor himself used this rule to create a reading habit. By placing a book within easy reach and removing distractions, he found himself reading more consistently. Over time, small environmental tweaks led to lasting behavioral change. The key insight: we don't need to overhaul our lives overnight. We just need to make the right choices easier and the wrong ones harder. Principle number 7, social investment. When stress hits, our instinct is often to withdraw, to pull away and isolate ourselves until we feel better. But Achor's final principle proves that this instinct is counterproductive. The most successful, resilient, and happy individuals are those who double down on their social connections during tough times. Relationships, Achor emphasizes, are the greatest predictor of happiness and long-term success. He found that people who cultivate close bonds with friends, colleagues, and family not only perform better, but also recover faster from stress and illness. Social support acts as both a buffer and a catalyst for growth. In one study, employees who had strong social networks at work were 40% more likely to be promoted and had significantly higher job satisfaction. Similarly, people who regularly express appreciation or engage in acts of kindness experience measurable boosts in happiness and energy. The message is clear: our greatest resource is each other. Success and joy are not solo pursuits. They are deeply social experiences. By investing in relationships, we build emotional capital that sustains us through challenges and amplifies our achievements. Part 3, the ripple effect. Happiness, as Shawn Achor emphasizes, doesn't exist in isolation. It radiates outward, like ripples spreading across water when a stone is dropped into a still pond. Every positive action, every word of encouragement, and every moment of kindness creates an invisible chain reaction that affects not only us, but everyone around us. This is what Achor calls the ripple effect, the profound influence one individual's happiness can have on an entire network of people. Achor's research revealed that emotions, both positive and negative, are contagious. In a corporate setting, when one employee brings enthusiasm, gratitude, or optimism to work, it can lift the mood of an entire team. Conversely, when negativity spreads, productivity plummets and morale collapses. The key takeaway is that happiness is not a personal luxury. It's a collective advantage. It enhances not only your own performance, but also the performance of everyone you interact with. How positivity spreads. Scientists at Harvard and the University of California found that happiness can spread through social networks up to 3 degrees of separation. This means your friend's friend's friend can be influenced by your emotional state, even if you've never met. A single smile, a supportive comment, or a small act of appreciation can ripple across communities and organizations, shaping the culture around you. In professional environments, this ripple effect is especially powerful. Achor describes teams that thrived under leaders who consistently practice positivity, celebrating progress, recognizing effort, and showing genuine care. These leaders created workplaces where people felt valued, motivated, and safe to innovate. Over time, these teams consistently outperformed others with similar resources but more negative atmospheres. The biological basis of contagious emotions. The ripple effect isn't just psychological, it's physiological. Our brains contain mirror neurons, specialized cells that allow us to feel the emotions of others. When someone smiles at us, our brain automatically activates the same neural pathways as if we were smiling ourselves. This empathetic wiring means that positivity and optimism literally synchronize our brain chemistry with those around us. Achor explains that this biological design helped early humans survive. Groups that fostered cooperation and emotional support outlasted those that fell into conflict or apathy. Even today, organizations that build trust and empathy outperform those ruled by fear or competition. Happiness, in other words, is an evolutionary advantage. Leadership and the ripple effect. Leaders have the greatest potential to create or destroy ripple effects. Their behavior sets the emotional tone for their teams. A single manager's attitude can determine whether employees approach work with excitement or dread. Achor observed that leaders who modeled gratitude, optimism, and compassion had teams that showed higher engagement and lower turnover. In one striking example, a manager at a financial firm began every meeting by asking his team members to share one recent success, personal or professional. Within months, the team's communication improved dramatically. Members began supporting one another's goals, and the office culture shifted from competitive to collaborative. The team's overall performance soared, not because of new strategies or incentives, but because positivity became the norm. The ripple effect also extends downward and outward. When employees feel supported and appreciated, they carry that energy into client interactions, family relationships, and social circles. A single act of recognition can set off a cascade of optimism that reaches far beyond the original moment, creating positive spirals. Achor describes how small, consistent acts of positivity can trigger what he calls an upward spiral. When we express gratitude or kindness, our brain releases dopamine, reinforcing the behavior and making it more likely to happen again. The recipient, in turn, experiences a boost in mood and is more likely to pass that positivity on. Over time, this becomes a self-sustaining cycle, a culture of thriving. Companies like Google, Zappos, and Southwest Airlines have institutionalized this principle by integrating joy, play, and appreciation into their workplace culture. They understand that happy employees create happy customers, and that emotional contagion is a competitive advantage. The same is true in families and friendships. When one person chooses positivity, even in the face of difficulty, it creates an emotional buffer for everyone else. This doesn't mean ignoring problems, but approaching them from a place of strength, perspective, and hope. Overcoming negative ripples. Of course, negative ripples exist too. Cynicism, gossip, and chronic complaining can spread just as fast, sometimes faster. Achor urges us to become conscious gatekeepers of the emotional tone we bring to every space we enter. By refusing to feed into negativity and consciously amplifying the positive, we can stop downward spirals before they start. He emphasizes that positivity doesn't mean toxic cheerfulness. It's not about pretending everything is fine when it isn't. It's about maintaining a constructive outlook and a belief in growth, even amid challenges. The goal isn't to suppress emotion, but to channel it productively, building a ripple effect mindset. So how do we harness the ripple effect intentionally? Achor outlines a few key habits. 1. Express genuine gratitude daily. Thank someone every day, a coworker, friend, or family member, for something they've done. It strengthens bonds and reinforces optimism. 2. Practice active listening. When others feel heard, they mirror respect and empathy back to us. 3. Celebrate small wins publicly. Recognition multiplies motivation. 4. Be the thermostat, not the thermometer. Instead of reacting to the emotional climate, set it. Consciously project calm, optimism, and kindness even when situations are tense. These small behaviors accumulate over time, creating a ripple effect that can transform not just individual lives, but entire organizations and communities. The exponential power of one person. Achor closes his discussion with an inspiring reminder. One person's change in mindset can ignite a wave of transformation far beyond what they can see. He tells the story of a teacher who, after applying positive psychology techniques, not only improved her students' grades, but also saw those students carrying forward kindness and resilience into their families and communities. That single teacher's mindset created a chain of positivity that rippled through hundreds of lives. The same principle applies to every one of us. By becoming more conscious of how we influence others, we can choose to be catalysts for positive change. Whether it's a smile, a kind word, or an encouraging message, the ripple effect begins the moment we act. The happiness advantage isn't about ignoring problems or painting over pain with positivity. It's about using scientifically proven tools to fuel growth, creativity, and achievement. Happiness is not at the end of the journey. It's the path itself. And once you step on it, every step forward becomes lighter, brighter, and infinitely more rewarding.